Hey y'all, this is Culture Soup, where tech, culture, and business collide. It's a podcast that spoons up everything hot from social media. I'm your host, L. Michelle Smith, and each episode we bring you some of the most notable and not yet notable thought leaders in tech, business, and culture. So I've been doing a lot of talking, speaking, writing, coaching on personal brands, your digital footprint. Gosh, getting your searchability on point on the internet. There's something that I've been talking about recently with university students that I've been guest lecturing to. And that is about the democratization of the internet. I asked them what that means. And even students ages 19, 20, 21, they know that that means access. Recently, I spoke at the University of North Texas, where Professor Neil Foote is in charge of the media ownership class. And we talked about how it is now an option to not just be an entrepreneur or go work for a big company, but to do both. I encourage the class members to take advantage of this democratization of the internet, because thanks to services like PayPal, Stripe, and Square, you can have an alert going off on your phone that isn't just text or email. It can be money in the bank. And with skills like communicators, journalists, advertisers, they can have an early start at building businesses all their own, including building brands at this early age, so that they can own instead of being owned. Today I talked to John Graham. And yes, he works for a biotech company. Yes, he's an employee advocacy expert. But he's a little more than that. Besides being my friend, he is an employee brand philosopher and authenticity activator. Yeah, that's deep. And believe me, John and I go really, really deep in this special extended episode of the Culture Soup podcast.
Hey,
what's going on? How you doing? We finally get to meet each other.
Finally, right?
I know. You have moved across the country since we first met over the phone.
That's exactly right. True. Yeah. I'm 3,000 miles, a couple thousand miles closer.
I guess.
Yeah.
Are you liking it?
Loving it.
Really? I could tell when you first got out there. I mean, but who doesn't like beaches and Teslas?
That's a good combination for sure. And then, it's 54 degrees and raining right now, but I will take that over the Arctic vortex any day.
Yeah.
It's vicious out east. So no, it's been awesome. Family's made the great transition. Job is phenomenal. A lot of opportunity, sunshine. Every time I see you post, I'm like, damn, she is working
Thank
hard.
you.
You are getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, the constant, consistent flow of really good content
Thank you.
It's inspiring.
Well, I have wonderful friends that know some stuff, and that's the premise, right? Because we're able to have a little chemistry that if I didn't know you, we can't have, right?
It's gonna be awkward, yeah, for sure.
Everybody, we have John Graham Jr. all the way from Los Angeles, California. What part of Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm in Thousand Oaks.
Okay.
So it's about 40 minutes west.
That's kind of a she frou-frou part of town, right?
I have to travel for my cultural interactions, for sure. For sure. Yeah,
Is that what happens?
But there's pockets, you know,
Yeah,
and it's cool.
okay.
You know how, like, when you see somebody of color in a space where we're not predominant, you're like, hey,
What's up?
you made it too.
Yeah, you made it. We made it.
Absolutely.
All right. And what you drinking? What you got?
I am drinking a Ginger Rogers, which is a little Prosecco, champagne, and ginger beer.
I love Prosecco. And I love ginger beer. So I'm going to have to try that. It's really good.
It's when you feel bougie, you know?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Well, you doing the bougie thing well.
I dabble. I dabble in bougie. I come from good stock.
Yeah, I think you do. So tell us what you do.
Yeah, so, professionally, I am a global employer brand and recruitment and marketing leader for Amgen, which is a biotech company, the largest biotech company in the world. And so my job, as it were, is to tell the employee's story in their voice across social channels, digital channels, and internal channels.
I love it. So we got a lot to talk about. Look, I bring friends on that are sitting at the intersection of tech, business, and culture. And you're absolutely there. Culture is always that thing that makes your squad a squad. So it's not always about skin color. And it may even be a microculture like the culture you have at your job, right? And so much of employee advocacy, like we're going to talk about, exists right there, right? And right there with social media. So let's talk a little bit about how we met, and then we're going to have our culture soup moment. So we have a mutual friend.
We do, Mr.
And we got to book that, right? Ruben Canada? Yes.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Ruben and I are friends, and you're friends with Ruben. And gosh, did he just like, ooh, y'all got to meet or something? I can't even remember.
That's exactly what it was. I was so he lives out here as well. I think he's in the Malibu area. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, and I was letting him know, just catching him up on where I'm at with my career. And he says, "Oh man, you got to talk to Michelle." And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me about it." He's like, "Well, we were on a panel together. She's phenomenal. She's dynamic, doing amazing things at AT&T. You guys have to meet." So, you know, next thing you know, through the power of social, right? It's
yes. And
LinkedIn,
this is the first time we've actually met in person. Well,
I know.
Virtually.
We're getting closer. Right, we're getting closer to that in-person situation.
We are. And you're my frat brother. So excited. 19?
Hey, 06.
08. Yay.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's have our culture soup moment. How about that?
Let's do it.
So I check out this threads all the time, and I see different things, of course, that people are talking about. And you can't miss the employees that are online shouting out their company, whether it's company news, whether it's, oh, gee, look at where I spoke on behalf of my company, maybe it's some award. There are platforms out there that actually enable this. So it's not just random employees out there doing this. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton and a lot more popping up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's some major players in the space. I mean, I'm biased towards a few, but I would suggest that the one that I've seen do it the best in the business context is LinkedIn's Elevate.
Okay. Now tell me about that one, because I haven't seen it. I've heard of it.
So let me disclaim and say I'm not getting paid by LinkedIn to promote this.
Yeah,
but,
unless they want to chime in later and get that corrected.
I'm always happy to receive a check. Yes.
Hashtag ad.
For sure. So when I first started evaluating employee advocacy platforms, it was really out of a need to put it all together in a platform, because I think most people will start with, okay, we'll come up with some topics, and put them on a spreadsheet and then send them out to our employee base, and they can, either copy paste or put their own take on it. But I'm like, you can't measure that. Mm-hmm. So, or you can, but it's painstaking, right? Because you have to do it all manually. So I looked at the landscape of several tools. A couple that came up were Social Chorus, Dynamic Signal, social companies or something to that effect. But there was about 4 or 5 of them, and LinkedIn Elevate was in the consideration set. And the aha moment for me was, our recruiters are already heavy on LinkedIn.
Yes.
They've invested time in developing their networks and their brands on that channel, and We have LinkedIn Recruiter as a platform from LinkedIn. We're doing, we have our corporate pages, all of our social marketing or sponsored ads. So it just made sense to keep it within the ecosystem. And so launched with the Elevate program at my former company, Merck, in 2017. And doing so was an amazing experience in learning how and what motivates employees to share content. And so based on the program that we built, the results that we were getting, LinkedIn invited me to their headquarters in New York to speak as a what they call an evangelist.
Yes.
And so, that experience showed, you're speaking to an audience of leaders in HR or marketing and so forth who are evaluating the platform or maybe on the fence of going over to that platform. But what I was able to provide in terms of value was just how we did it, what works, and some perspective on the real tangible business results. And in this case, I mean, it's as an employer brand philosopher, I mean, this is a gold mine, right? And and I think the natural inclination is to just use that kind of platform to pump out company content through your employees' profiles. To which I suggest don't do that.
Okay, well, you know what? We want to talk about that because
we'll get into that.
When we get to the crux of who's benefiting from this, of course, more than anything, the companies are. But how do you make that a win-win for your employees? I talk a lot about having mentees that are just pedal to the floor with company news all the time. And I've cornered a few of them and said, come here. What else is going on in your life? Have you shared that recently? And are all of your followers fellow employees? Because you're cranking that globe out like rampant. And I love the globe too. That's not the point. But when do we see more of what you bring to the table in your thinking? And it's a real aha moment for them because I'm one of those folks. I'm an entrepreneur, of course. I have my own brands and I have my company's brand. And there was at some point that I realized that I was cranking out far more about my employer than I was even my thinking. And that when I even tweeted my thinking, people inadvertently linked it back to the brand. So I had a real epiphany and come to Jesus moment in my very own life. And now I'm trying to pour into folks. It's great as a marketer because those are dollars that you aren't spending. And if you could take that and put a value to it, I'm almost certain that you'd come up with a pretty hefty amount. So it's a very smart thing for companies to do. Yeah.
I completely agree. And just touching on that point, so when you were pumping out the corporate content on your personal page, what kind of responses were you getting, if any at all?
Well, here's the thing. I hadn't really thought about it in that way until it hit me that I was getting tons of, oh, great, from all of my fellow employees. And anybody else in my community was pretty silent.
Crickets.
Now,
Crickets.
Some of them were very happy to see me glowing, right? Because whenever, I was speaking on behalf of my company, it was good for me, right? So there are those who were like, yay. But after a while, it was kind of like they faded. And I was like, what's going on with my community? I love my coworkers, but, and then I saw the reverse was true. When I started putting content out there that didn't have much to do with my employer, my fellow employees clammed up. And the rest of them were like, go Michelle. And I was like, okay, there's got to be balance here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's what employee advocacy as a holistic approach from a programmatic standpoint, that's what you try to provide is that balance. I'm not a huge advocate of pumping the company content through an employee advocacy platform because, to your point, it's very low relevance for your employees' networks beyond the company, which then anchors your engagement metrics, anchors authenticity, and you don't get the intended benefit. So what your company will start to look at is, okay, well, we're not really getting conversions out of this. We're just going to tank the program. Well, no, the program's fine. You just have to tweak and work backwards from the audiences.
Right.
So if you look at, so what we ended up doing was looking at, what are the functions around the organization, and then let's look at some of the interests, the trending topics, the thought leaders, the high value content publications, and pump all of that content through and let employees share that with their networks, because at the end of the day, our job is to provide value add content to our employees to share with their networks.
Right.
And the results speak for themselves. I mean, what you end up seeing is not just, okay, we're getting more hits to our company page. We're also getting the downstream effects of now people going to look at jobs, people applying for jobs, people then getting hired. So now you can look at from end to end. The moment somebody in one of our employees' networks clicks on an article that they've shared through that platform, we can track that all the way to the point of hire.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal, right? So and that proves the ROI from the business side. So you keep, senior leadership happy.
Well, let's talk about balance, because if you're a big company and you can afford a platform like Elevate or Social Course or Dynamic, I forgot what it's called.
Dynamic Signal.
You're already outspending that employee. Okay? And this is the way I like for, as an employee advocate myself. I like for them to think about all the dollars that this big company has versus the dollars that you don't have. And then think about your social capital in that way. It's your real estate. So how are you going to use it? Is it okay for this big multi-billion-dollar company to come in and take up all your real estate? Even if you are opting in willingly and very proud of your company. Is that really the right way to go? That's a really good question.
I think it's a rhetorical, right? Like, I think we know the answer to that. You wouldn't allow Coca-Cola to come in and promote all over your page without cutting you a check, right? So it's you do have to be conscious and protective of your space and make sure that the content that you're pumping out of your platforms or your profiles aligns to your core brand as a personal brand, and additionally benefits your employer's brand. It's not a tough balance to strike if the content and the guardrails are set up in a way that encourages that. So
you're saying the onus is on the company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ted Rubin, I don't know if you heard our last, we went on for like an hour. And I put the uncut
Ted's
version
amazing.
on there. And the folks in the UK are all over it. They're loving it. And it's one of the most listened to episodes to this point. And we talked mostly about personal brand, but it's hard to not talk about employee advocacy and personal brand at the same time. And he has some strong opinions. In fact, what came out in that Black Enterprise article that you were part of and he was a part of is that he believes on the whole, most companies aren't doing it the right way. And you've touched on one thing there that you and he align on, and that is the content that they're putting on these platforms for employees to share shouldn't just be self-serving to the company, correct?
Not at all.
So, that would really put a lot of marketers in a deer in headlights position. So then what are we doing? And what should we be sharing? And after all, this is our chance to get our message out. And our employees are opting in, so why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I do a talk on personal brand, which encompasses employer brand as well. And the thing that I like to say is there is no I in relevant, right? And so if we're thinking about working backwards from the interests, the need states of our target audiences, we're up against a flow of content that is unprecedented today, right? People are hit with more messages in a day than ever before in history. So how do you keep from being noise in the news feed and then or differentiating and standing out? And so I think as consumers, we've been trained and we've told consumer marketers that we don't want to be sold to, right? And your brand, people don't care about your brand. They care about their self-interest.
Right.
Now, if you can align your brand's value proposition to the self-interest in a way that's subtle, in a way that's authentic and that's real for them,
key.
then you have a shot, right, at getting consideration, engagement, conversion, whatever. So no, I'm 100% of the mindset that if it's not relevant, then it shouldn't be shared. Because
like
at the end of the day, you're wasting an opportunity.
Really. So this is like a come to Jesus moment in the marketing office, right? Communications or wherever, where you really have to look at this content and say, is this relevant to our employees? And the only way you're going to find that out is to what? Ask them.
To ask them.
Listen,
you got to pulse survey. Listen.
See what they're sharing and their communities are sharing with them that gets high engagement. Right. That may shift a strategy. Like, this scares people. This scares 180.
People. It's non-traditional, right? It's not easy. It's not rote. It's not taught in schools, right? This is somebody who has to be in tune with the culture.
Yeah.
100%. Whatever the culture is that you're trying to connect with, you have to be in tune with it. And it's, I look across many different functions in my organization, and it's not going to be the same piece of content that goes across all functions. So you really have to be clear and purposeful in where you're sourcing the content for your employees to share.
Well,
and that's the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Where do you go to get content on a regular basis? What stops you from scrolling and get you to click?
You just touched on something that's very key, and this is why this show is even named what it's called. You said you have to be in tune with the culture. Now, if I'm a corporate type, which I am, right? And I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, what is our corporate culture? I think sometimes, and let me know what you think, we're missing the fact that our corporate culture doesn't exist in a bubble. That the people who make up that culture are part of the cultures that exist outside of the company. And again, we're not talking about skin color. We're talking about the things that interest people, and people gather their community around the content, right? So
100% agree.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is. And that's the sort of, to your point, the come to Jesus moment for companies to figure out, who are we?
Yeah.
Right. And I say that in my talk. That is one of the hardest questions in life to answer from an individual perspective. If I were to ask you, who are you? Right. And I separate the external definers of who are you, right? Not your job title, not your alumni status, not your parental marriage status, any of that. What value do you offer the world? Who are you inherently at your core that you express to the world? When you can figure that question out, whether it's personal brand, corporate brand, employer brand, then you have a shot, right? Because now you know what your message is. Now you know how you speak, your tone of voice, where you go for publication, all of that. It all comes in.
This guy, because I preach this all the time to my mentees, to those folks who are in, mid-manager, even 3rd, 5th year entrepreneur. If you can nail that value proposition, and I don't think there's a difference between your personal brand and the brand you bring into your company. It shouldn't be. When it comes to authenticity, it should be one straight line. Right. And it's not your job title. Yep. Okay, so let's stop real quick. Yeah, it's not your job title. All right. Ooh, some people were just like, whoa, what did she just say? And woo. I mean, that's kind of radical to some people.
That's a fact. And that's actually a point of focus that we focus on in these employee advocacy programs, is starting at the profile level on LinkedIn. What does your headline say? Because by virtue of you sharing content, it's going to increase the visibility of your profile. So when they come to your profile, what are you telling them, right? What's going to compel them and encourage them to explore more, not just on your profile, but then to click through to your company, because you're a reflection of the company that hired you.
Let's get back to the idea of culture converging on these employee advocacy platforms, because I just spoke to some kids over at the University of North Texas. It was a media ownership class with journalism students, comm students, advertising students. And they are looking at the idea of ownership and not just going to work for a big company. I told them that they actually have three choices, where you and I, coming out of school, we probably had two, but our parents and counselors were veering towards that one. And that was, yes, get your degree,
be an
get
employee,
that paper, get your resume ready,
right,
get a job, put your head down and keep it, right? As long as you can. Yep. We're Gen Xers, right? That's what we were taught.
Yeah.
These millennials came and shook it up. And they're like, stay. For what? They don't care about me. I'm going to get the money. I'm going to get the title. And at most, I'm staying for 3 years, because that's the fastest I can make it up the chain when these companies are going so slow. And the Centennials are coming right behind them the same way. But
Gen Z is going to change the game.
The third choice I talked to them about is one that I'm sure a lot of, traditional companies are like, well, why would you say that's an option? You can do both. And it has a lot to do with the democratization of the internet. And so let's stop right there with the idea of the internet and social media as a democracy. I know, right? So if we're going to mix the culture of a corporation, which can't have a culture without the people, and the people are the carriers of that culture, but they don't exist in a bubble. They're a part of all these other cultures out there too. And you're saying you have to be in tune with the culture. Don't we have to democratize? Am I going to say that? Do we need to democratize employee advocacy? Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I own this platform, because somebody shut me down.
This blasphemy you speak, I love it. You do, and that's the push and the pull that companies are experiencing right now. Is they're realizing, and I've seen it in a couple of industries where they're realizing for the first time in however long their history is as a company that they can no longer rely on their good name to attract talent, right? And that's because people have become entities unto themselves through the democratization of the internet, information, social access, all of that. And so I'd say to the next generation, right, Gen Z coming up behind millennials, there's a fourth option, and that's opting out completely. I don't need to take on the debt instruments of a mortgage and go live in the suburbs to work at this company that's based in 40 miles outside of the metro area. I don't even have
to go into this 4-year institution and go into debt.
Exactly.
When I have this
I learned to
device
code
in
watching
my pocket,
YouTube videos.
And I can make money with my PayPal, my Square, my Stripe.
Absolutely. So you're getting entrepreneurs at an earlier and earlier age. LinkedIn lowered the account age limit to 13.
They did.
Because you're getting people.
Oh, I can't wait
you're
to
getting
get Joni
kids.
On.
I'm saying there's viable business leaders at 13, 14, 15 years old who have created something of value and are shaping it themselves without ever. Or they're not even in high school. Well, they're just hitting high school now.
Jalen Bledsoe was one of those people. He was my second or third episode. 20-year-old multi-millionaire. 20. He made his first million at 15. Why shouldn't he be on LinkedIn?
Right. What company is going to be attractive enough to bring him in as an employee?
Well, and here's the thing. Yeah.
Not unless he's running something. He's coming in there to run it. Right? Like so to that point, this is the personal brand development that's happening before they even touch, right, the academic institutions or corporate institutions. And you as a traditional model or industrial model evolved company have to compete with that now. So it's either you figure out how to make influencers from within your own organization, or you continue to pay influencers from outside it and run the risk of lack of authenticity.
The influencers are becoming influencers anyway, right? So
That's
let's
true.
put these companies at ease for a second. I think we need to, right? We need to
All
say,
right.
okay,
All
look,
right.
you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing by doing these employee advocacy programs. Yay. Okay. Not only are you saving
Yeah.
money, you are impacting the bottom line and you are putting a face to your company, right? Because it's peer to peer.
Sure.
People like to get information and advice from people that look like them, right? So it's true
Right.
that, somebody who's my girlfriend or friend will take information from me much sooner than they would my employer, right? Okay. So,
Absolutely.
yay, you're doing the right thing. Put them at ease about this whole personal brand thing, because a lot of these traditionalists are like,
Yeah.
well, why would they be doing that? Are they looking for a job? And should they
Right.
be?
Right.
Well, okay, there's some stats that
Yeah.
kind of say that we should, even if even if we aren't. Employers are keeping
That's true.
employees 3 years tops. And even some of these
On
big
average.
ones that have had people for 20, 25, 35, it's kind of yesterday, right?
That's not a norm
No.
any longer, right? The average is 3 to 5 years in any given function. I mean, look, to put companies at ease, the light at the end of the tunnel here is that not only does your employee advocacy program sort of add rocket fuel to your talent attraction efforts, it does the same for your talent retention efforts. Because now what you're doing is you're telling your employees that I trust you and I'm empowering you to raise your visibility as a means of not only promoting what's important to you, but we will reap the benefits downstream indirectly by doing so. And that shows a lot of trust.
Trust is the key word
right? And I
here.
think
Because
absolutely.
sometimes trust isn't something that is tangible. I mean, trust implies that you have to have a little faith. Like there's something that's not there that you can put your hands on, that you have to just
Sure.
put your belief behind.
Yeah, and people like me help to add a little bit of security and comfort to that leap of faith for organizations, because we're not just letting them go willy-nilly on a corporate platform. It's quite the opposite. Nobody would know that the content you're sharing, Michelle, that's coming from our advocacy platform came from the company.
Wait. Stop.
It looks
Stop. Okay, because this is radical too. There
Hey,
are social media
absolutely.
policies out there at various companies that if you tweet or share from that platform, there's an appropriate hashtag that needs to be there. Now, they do that primarily for metrics, so they say. Talk to me
No,
about
they
that.
do that to distance themselves from the individual's wild
It's-
opinion that may not align with their corporate brand.
Yeah. Is
Let's
that
keep it funky. So here's the thing. This is why I don't advocate for putting company content through an employee advocacy platform, because now what you're doing is you're putting your message in the mouth of the
Yes.
employee, which may not be genuine or
Right.
authentic, right? And so this is why the content that you share should be of broad value to a wide possible audience who cares about the subject of that content. And then as a direct benefit, or an indirect benefit, I should say, the company gains visibility. Because on a platform like LinkedIn, the moment I click on your profile, I see where you work.
Exactly.
There's a link directly to the company. I can check out the company, and that actually happens organically, which is what you want.
Well, let's
right? You don't want it
exactly.
to be forced.
So there's a school of thought that even IRL, we're talking about not even the social realm, where
Okay.
if you just do a byline article and you're giving thought leadership that is unbranded, that your company will get the glow from that.
Yep.
But there's a school of thought that says, no,
Absolutely.
we need to be branded. And here's why, right? Because that's just not
Yeah.
out there enough. So even in speaking ops, if an employee gets on the platform as an employee of XYZ company,
Sure.
and they're talking about concepts and trends and issues, and they never give a company message, but they still give the company shine, correct?
100%. 100% agreed. You can, as long as you are employed by a company, you are not separate from that
Right.
company. Your views and your opinions are your own, but you are an employee. When you go
So
to sleep on Sunday night, when you wake up on
wouldn't
Monday
it make
morning, you're still an
sense
employee.
to source out those individuals in your company that have that kind of platform, that are doing it responsibly?
Sure.
And
Absolutely. There's data behind that. In fact, when I worked with LinkedIn to bring the program home and get the buy-in, they went and did a deep dive analysis on the LinkedIn platform and looked at the entire company employee population that was on LinkedIn. And what they were able to tell us is that, okay, here's your company page, right? And you have X amount of followers on your company page. Well, here, like way off the chart, is the first degree connections of every employee at the company, which was like 10 times the amount of your corporate page. So, okay, so if we're thinking, okay, I'll just use Amgen as an example, 400,000 connections on the followers on the corporate page, but your employee base has 4.2 million reach via first degree connections. It's a no-brainer.
It's not rocket science.
Not at all. So you go to where the broadest possible reach is by leveraging the authentic voices of your employees. And like you said earlier, employees are super credible with their first degree connections, just by virtue of the connections. And so I always like to say, how many people click on pop-up ads when they surf the internet? And I'll ask the room that, and 0 hands go up. And I'm like, okay, unless you click that little X to try and get out of the pop-up ad, and then you end the ad anyway. But I said, okay, well, how many people look at user reviews before they purchase something off Amazon?
Everybody.
All hands go up. Right. It's no different here, right? So we're leveraging the credibility and the authentic connection they already have, and giving them more content that they don't have to source.
Right. So there's a mindset that this personal branding thing is absolutely in total conflict with employee advocacy. And what I'm hearing you say is they actually shouldn't be, and they aren't.
It's symbiotic, 100%. I mean, you can't separate the two. The question is, how do you shape that? What is your message, and who is your audience? And if we think about the personal brand and the corporate brand, they do have different audiences, and I don't disagree. And so there's a fear a lot of times of, well, if we invest in raising the visibility and the efficacy of a personal brand of our employees, won't that just make them more poachable by our competition? And I suggest no, because they're already being courted by recruiters on a daily basis.
You should be poaching them yourself.
Absolutely. Right. Let's think of better ways to retain, and that's the point, right? If they're going to leave your company, it's not because they were given a platform. There's other issues at hand, right? Nobody leaves companies, they leave managers. So let's look at the internal mechanisms of retention and add advocacy and give people a voice. And I think you have a really strong case to keep people retained, but also keep them happy and engaged.
Totally. And if people are leveraging the internet in these creative ways, and in ways that I was discussing with Jason Caston, the price of a lot of the things that we're doing today is just it's in the basement. Like it's democratized. Right. Like anybody can publish a book for less than $500 on their own on the internet. You can start a beauty brand on the internet for $500, like on Instagram or less. Yeah. So sometimes a lot of these things cost a lot less if you let the employee do them than to, okay, well, let's start a branded podcast. And if we start this branded podcast, let's go get studio time. We're going to get the best talent. And then you've racked up all this stuff what if you went through your employee base and found out who had them?
Right. You don't want to shortcut it, right? And I think we're still looking for shortcuts in the corporate sense of, we have budget, let's buy it. Well, no, it costs you a lot less to build it organically with all of the resources you have. I mean, if you look at the cost of losing an employee versus retaining one, the cost isn't just in the expense of having to now attract new talent. The cost comes in the knowledge, the subject matter expertise, the cultural impact that employee may have had, and that's irreplaceable, right? So the key here is, how do we leverage that expertise in a way that shows their the command of their space or their function as a thought leader, and gives them a tool to amplify that voice.
So a lot of these traditional companies think that thought leadership can only come from the C-suite.
Right. Well, that's in direct opposition to the stat of 85% of C-suite across all industries have zero social presence.
Okay, y'all, he said it. I didn't say it.
So how is that?
I didn't say
85% of the C-suite has zero
there's a ton of reasons
social
for that.
presence.
There's a ton of reasons for that. We can
100% agree.
Enumerate them.
Yeah.
Some of them just not a part of the digital age. And they're wanting to be, and so they have a presence on LinkedIn, but they're not engaging because that's safe. Then there's that other reason, it's safe not to be engaged and on, okay? Then some of them are coming to the game too late. So they spent all of their 20, 25 years, 30 years going into the C-suite. They make it there, and suddenly they're like, I want to engage. Engage with me. I am the CXO of whatever. And then they're wondering, like, why aren't they showing up?
Right. Yeah, there's several competing factors, and it does come a lot from risk aversion. And I get it. I mean, you're the head of a multi-billion-dollar multinational organization. One wrong sentence can topple a stock market.
From a second line, it's not.
Right. The reality is, how many CEOs have done that in social?
Very few.
It's very few. Unless you just come out with something so wild, like, okay.
Wait, your Tesla guy.
Yeah.
He's done it a couple times.
Yeah. Or the president.
Yeah, well,
or the president.
There you go.
He's done it.
Stock market.
Yeah. So I guess the reality is, well, then you also have the CEOs that recognize the need to be in social because they see the power of it, the ability to connect with an audience that can help bolster the brand, but they haven't found their voice yet. They haven't developed their voice in social.
So much of the success of those that are doing it right have a heart for people offline. Did I go there?
That's strong. Message.
I mean, it's the truth. And so when they come online and people follow them, there are other folks that look at them and like, well, how did that happen? How do I build my audience that way? And I want to say, did you touch the people offline? Do you allow them to touch you? Why would they follow you on social if you're not likable in person?
And that's a fact, right? I often say that social is not the place where you, develop and perfect your facade, right? It should be the place that amplifies and enhances who you already are and just gives you a bigger voice. I need you to repeat
that because I preach this. Social media is a tactic. Yeah. It is not your personal brand.
It's a tool. It's a tool, absolutely. And just as a hammer can build a house, it can also kill a person if used improperly. So if you learn how to wield the tool to, I think, to make easier what you do naturally, then you're using the tool as an extension of yourself, which is where you get great results. So to your point, it's not the place to build facades. This is a place to amplify who you are offline and bring it to a broader audience. Now, CEO or somebody in the C-suite already is well networked. A lot of times they're getting their information directly from peers across industries or and people that are well thought of in their circles. So they don't feel the need to go to an open forum to connect. But But it's really on how you shape that conversation. And I work with executives in reverse mentoring from a social perspective to let them know that, no, this is the place where you get a pulse on not only how your company brand is perceived, but how your brand is perceived as the leader of said company. And this, nowhere else could you get that direct feedback and engage in a way, right? In a way that has parameters. And so some C-suiters have voices who speak for them on their behalf. I have mixed feelings about that. I think if you are adept at the voice of the person that you're communicating for, then okay, that works. But I always believe you should be getting direct input on that messaging. They should be helping you craft those blog articles or those posts or tweets and so forth, and you carry out the rest. But I want to know more about who you are as a leader, how you got to where you are, what you've learned along the way, how it's helped you grow, how you've changed or impacted lives in your voice. When you put it in that perspective, they're like, oh.
But that scares a lot of people. It scares a lot of people.
It's not traditional. Yeah. Usually you have communications departments for that, or media training.
But how authentic can you be?
That is the true test right there.
Yeah,
there's no limitation.
There's transparency, and it's guarded transparency. We're not saying, tell all your business. That's not it at all.
Come and spill the secret sauce. Right.
We want to touch you. We need a face, and we need somebody we can relate to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are the rock stars of industries. These are the people that, are viewed in such high regard, and there's a level of untouchability even as an employee in the company under these CEOs or the C-suiters. It's I saw such and such in the hallway the other day, and I held the door for him. He said, thank you. That moment of impact goes well beyond what you would ever know, right? It's huge. Imagine if somebody's able to have a conversation with, a Richard Branson, not Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, right? These people who make it a point to connect.
This is, the name Cent Marshall. She's the CEO of the Mavericks.
Yes.
Okay. There is magic in Cent Marshall, but the magic of Cent Marshall is Cent Marshall loves people, like genuinely. So she has developed this larger than life personality. If she moves through the room, you don't know if it's Tiger Woods or Jesus, because people are just flocking towards her. And there's nothing she could do on social media to manufacture that.
Nope. No, and that carries over. And that's why I use the word rock stars of their industry, because there's a certain mystique to celebrity that people just want to your point, to be able to touch it. They want to be able to interact with it. And that in some way improves their own personal perspective, self-worth, validation of industries, whatever the case may be. And who are we not to help amplify that?
You just touched on another key point. That's executive presence. I think people have that all wrong. Like what that means. Like suddenly it means you put on the suit and you walk a certain way and you have, this heft about you. That's executive presence. What you just described is executive presence. That's that awareness that you have about how people perceive you and how you actually move in and out of these different places and carry yourself in a way that it's almost magnetism.
It's 100% magnet. I don't think you get to that level of leadership without having that piece. Now, it's where do you choose to flex and express it that becomes the conversation. So, you may be doing that great with suppliers, with Wall Street, with whatever, but how are you doing that with the custodial services at your company? How are you doing that with your mid-level management or your early career new hires?
Isn't that the thing?
Interns.
I don't think that mid-level managers think that they're even allowed to have executive presence. And then that is people look at you like, why is she walking with such
poise? Yes. Who does she think she is? but that's one of the carryovers of the industrial model, right? The industrial corporate model that has beaten down middle management into this. All right, I can't be of the people because I'm trying to get to leadership right at a higher level, but I can't be too ambitious because then leadership will feel afraid or right that I'm coming for their position. So you're in a very tough spot in middle management. But I think again with the wave of not only social and tech, but just the expectations from employees in millennial and Gen Z generations is flipping that on its head. Right. It's going to take a few years. I mean, and I've sat, I might get crucified for this, but I think there's going to be a point where you look at, I've often said, at what point does the culture really shift? Do you have to wait until a certain generation is aged out? Well, then no, because the generation prior learned everything they know from a management style from that generation. So It carries on. So that's why I say Gen Z is probably going to be the first generation where those mores and norms are not relevant.
That's amazing.
And
so much is happening with Gen Z. Talk about it all the time. The word minority is out the door because 50% of those babies were babies of color in 2012. The whole paradigm, it didn't just shift, it's obliterated in that generation. So they're going to see things very differently than we do. And we're trying to force it on them. They're already in college, and some of them are beginning to come into the job market now. And they have the internet in
this
their
year
pocket.
Was the first year.
They've got money-making ability right here. So how do you, as a company, and I'm sure they're all grappling with it right now, how do you keep this employee happy for 3 to 5 years? Because that's the window you got.
Leverage their voice. Amplify their voice. To your point, they've already got one. We as organizations or companies are trying their hardest to get into those conversations in a way that doesn't look like, the old guy at the bar or the old guy at the club, right?
And
like
that's a good point. So the old
awkward.
head at the club is the one thinking that they're attracting the centennials. When it's your middle managers that are kind of youngish and leveraging the internet in ways that they can relate to.
Well as the other Gen Zers who are already in the workforce, because they've got firsthand experience of a company culture or younger millennials on that side. Who are now into their third, fourth, fifth year in a company. They have a firsthand perspective of what corporate culture is like, but they also they still have a solid footing into their entrepreneurial endeavors, pop culture and now culture. So really, you need to figure out ways to get into the conversation by giving people who are already in it a platform.
I'm hearing a few different tips. I'm just going to start crystallizing them. First of all, empower your employees with relevant content that they can use, right?
First and foremost. Absolutely. Safe, compliant, regulatory approved, whatever the case may be, but arm them with it.
The second one I heard you say was know the culture. And that's broader than just your corporate culture. Right?
100%. Absolutely. Yep. Know the audience, know the culture that you're trying to
then
engage.
I hear you saying empower your people who are empowered with the internet.
Sounds revolutionary.
I'm just
sounds revolutionary when you put it up. Hey. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact. Empower them, amplify, trust them.
Trust. And then I also hear you say,
trust.
Go deep into your bench. And don't just rely on the C-suite because they may not even have the proper engagement to do what they need to do. So find the people who do.
Yep, that's exactly right. The C-suite has an awesome. They're already getting traditional media exposure, which is at one point that was the holy grail, right? The broadest audience, the highest visibility and eyeballs. but not anymore. You need both. You need the combination. You need the C-suite on traditional media and that outlet, and you need the employee base on social media. And that combination creates this movement, right? A mass of true representation of your internal culture.
Those are great tips for companies if they're open to this and they're wanting to just like supercharge their employee advocacy. Now let's turn to the employee.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for Joe, middle manager, who is just excited about the internet and loves to share and just out of the bottom of his heart, nothing sinister. And maybe he is thinking this is the way to have better footing if for some reason a pink slip shows up. How do you encourage Joe, middle manager, in an environment that is still very much shaped by this industrial model?
That's a really thoughtful question. I would never make the false promise that improving your personal brand makes you pink slip proof. But what it does do is it helps position you as somebody of credibility in your space should you need to explore other opportunities out there. As you well know, the best time to find a job is when you have a job. So you should never start working on your personal brand out of desperation, right? Because now you're looking at keywords and what will come up in keyword searches and Boolean searches for recruiters. And the time is when you are in the midst of everyday work at an organization and you can share a unique perspective on your approach, your inspiration or influencers on your leadership style, how you empower your employees as a manager, your thoughts on trends in your related field or function. This is the time to start doing that when you have the luxury of stability and security. Now, if you're in the market, then for you, it's not just positioning yourself to get the same job you've had. This is the perfect time to start positioning yourself for the job you've always wanted. Right? And so it, I work with people in a consulting capacity to suggest, look at your profile from top to bottom, and if it's not compelling from that first visual to your headline to your summary to your job experience and all of that, you have some work to do, because that's the first thing that people see. So middle managers, I think, are in a really good spot to flex the expertise that they've garnered, but also positioning themselves for that next level up.
Early on, that value proposition, like crystallizing that, because I think if Joe, middle manager, could learn a bit about polishing that external face, it might be a little bit more attractive to their employer. Because I think one of the fears that you said that a lot of these companies have is, how will they carry this message? Is it in our voice? Is it, all of this stuff? And I'm not saying that you need to turn into some talking head or something that you're not. Being very authentic. But if you understand your value proposition, you can kind of hone and shape who you are. I mean, for me, I help businesses and people thrive at the intersection of tech, culture, and business. My current employer fits very well in that. And that makes sense because here I am, right? But even if I go to somewhere else, if I'm being true to my value prop and it's rung true with them, I'm going to be squirreling my purpose, right?
Absolutely. And that's your value prop should be the reason why your company hired you. I mean, it's not a stretch, right? And I think where people, not everybody's a creative mind, right? Not everybody's a wordsmith. So it should be your desire to seek out somebody in marketing who does copywriting, work with them on the side, buy them lunch. Let's talk. I would love to for you to take a look at my profile and see how I can make my headline a bit more snappier, right? It's thinking about how do you articulate that question of who are you, and not just default to your title, your job title, or the company you work at. I encourage people to really dig deep in it. It becomes this transformative experience. And you have to, because if you don't unlock who you are at your core, your inherent value and what you were designed to do, right? Because I'll walk somebody back to their childhood and when they were 8 years old and their father got a brand new stereo and took it out of the box and said, make it work, read the instructions. And that became the catalyst for you becoming a systems engineer, right? Most people don't go back and connect those dots to see how they got to where they are and why it just seems so, kismet that they're doing exactly what they do. So unlocking that value proposition at core level, who are you? Be able to answer it without using external identifiers. And then that starts telling the world that you've put thought into how you represent yourself externally. But it's also compelling and may lead them to want to know more.
So, John, you just moved out to LA and you got this exciting new gig.
Yeah.
You're out there in Thousand Oaks, California. What can we look forward to? Are you speaking soon? Do you have a book coming down the head? Like, we want to support you. Tell us how to support you.
Well, I am speaking at a few engagements this year. Most, I guess, let's see, the first one coming up is end of this month at the Coalition of Black Excellence in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Never heard of that one. That sounds awesome.
I'll shoot you a link. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, please. And you're not too far from Oakland, where there's a hotbed of Black excellence and creativity and innovation.
Indeed. I'm excited about that one for sure. Facilitating at the Talent Brand Alliance or Talent Brand Summit in Austin in March. And then
around what time? Around South by?
Last week of March.
Okay. I'll miss you.
And then I'm speaking at eBrand Con or Employer Brand Conference in San Diego in May. So, busy schedule.
I can't wait to hear you speak because I need to be in the room.
Hey, I'll shoot you some
I'm impressed because just the conversations we had. The first conversation I had with you, I'm like, okay, I'm writing the story and I need you to be in it. Like, this week.
I'm fortunate. We are a reflection of our network for sure, right? So I'm just happy to be in the room. Shout out to hey.
And we got to book that, man.
We do. We need to work on that. Two-pronged approach. I am working on a book. I am. Yeah. I figure I should put my my years of work into the employer brand space in a title.
Yes, you should. You have a very important point of view, and it's rich and it's helpful.
Thank you.
To both employees and brands. And bravo for, taking a real stance, because a lot of people are afraid to do that these days.
I'm not afraid to know.
And look, you've only benefited from it.
It's worked. It's worked so far. I'll say that.
I encourage you guys to follow him on IG because you get a little peek into his life. He has a beautiful family. And he's really soaking in this West Coast California love.
It's so nice in January, February. I'm not going to lie, folks. Mm-hmm. Come and get you some sunshine. Come on in. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, anything you want to add?
Thank you. This has been awesome. Our conversations are always awesome. To do it and watch you in real time and with a microphone and headset and watch you in your element, it's an absolute pleasure.
Now, wasn't that a treat? Just over an hour's worth of rich conversation with John Graham. So grateful that he came on. Now, we are entering the month of March. As you know, that's Women's History Month. Our special series kicks off next Thursday. It's called Authentically She. And we're going to kick it off with the Chief Marketing Officer of Mary Kay, Cheryl Atkins Green. That's right, she was just named to BE's Most Powerful Women in Corporate America. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Culture Soup. Tell a friend to subscribe. Go to theculturesoup.com and we'll see you online. This message is brought to you by the 30-Minute Mentor. for the month of March, I'm celebrating Women's History Month. However, whether you're a woman or a man, you'll want to take advantage of this very special free 30-minute mentor masterclass. The topic is building and activating your personal board of directors. I talk about this topic all the time. I've written about it. I've even shared on the Culture Soup podcast, but this time we're going to go deep. If you are ready to move from a linear mentoring model to a surround sound model for growing your business or career, this free 30-minute mentor masterclass will reveal how to move beyond a mere mentorship and sponsorship paradigm to a 360 model that engages air cover, ground cover, and latent board members who may already be in your community. We'll talk about how to activate that board with your value proposition. So sign up today. You can register at the30minutementor.com. This free webinar happens March 7th at 7 p.m. Central. Also, don't forget to go listen to the replay of February's masterclass, Leveraging Your Personal Brand for Maximum Impact. See you online. The Culture Soup podcast is a production of No Silos Communication.